well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. I'm glad you're with us on the program today. We're going to be talking with my friend Laura Carno from Faster, Colorado here in just a minute. Glad that she could carve out some time for us today because she has been very busy. There have been a lot of school districts around the state of Colorado that have been reaching out to Laura saying, all right, listen, how do we have armed school staff in place? We want to have this, when our kids go back to school, maybe at the end of this year, but certainly by next fall. So we're going to be talking with Laura about that here in just a moment or two. But before we do that, here's something we really have to think about. What's happening with the banks? It's literally crazy. Can you imagine what this is going to do to the retirement savings of America? Now, I want to tell you what I've heard from Augusta Precious Metals. Gold buying is on fire right now because people want gold IRAs to protect their retirement savings. And get this, if you have $100,000 plus saved for retirement, Augusta will pay you in pure gold to learn how gold IRAs can protect you. That's a big deal. A pure gold coin for free. Reach out to Augusta Precious Metals today and learn how you can get started with gold. Don't let bank failures get you down. Get this free gold coin and get some peace of mind. Just call 855-222-4997 to learn whether gold can help protect your retirement and get your free gold coin. That's Augusta Precious Metals at 855-222-4997. Again, 855-222-4997. All right, so let's start our conversation with Laura Carno from Faster, Colorado. Laura has been a guest on Cam and Company untold times over the years. I'm always glad when she can spend a few minutes with us, particularly when we're talking about this truly life-saving effort to protect students across the state of Colorado. Take a look and a listen. Laura, thanks so much for carving out a couple of minutes today. I know that you're extremely busy right now, which is a good thing, considering what it is that you are focused on right now. So for folks who, at this point, I can't imagine there are many in our audience who are not familiar with Faster Colorado, but can you explain a little bit what Faster Colorado is all about?
Yeah, so we're going into our 7th training year already, and we train armed school employees in Colorado. So these are schools that the district has said, we're passing this policy of armed employees, and they need to get training, and we provide what I think is world-class training. Our instructors are all active duty law enforcement instructors and SWAT guys, and they're just a really great bunch of instructors. But it's been going crazy this year, and I'm glad more people are interested in pursuing these policies.
Absolutely. And I think the last time that you and I talked on Cam and Company, you said that one of the things that you had noticed was that Faster Colorado, a lot of the interest at first was from rural school districts, maybe smaller charter schools. But this was probably 8 or 9 months ago, I think, the last time we had you on, which that's my fault. But you had said that you were starting to see more interest from bigger school districts, suburban school districts that maybe already had school resource officers in place, but they were looking for that additional layer of security. So who's reaching out to Faster Colorado right now?
Yeah, and I think that maybe that was right after Uvalde when we had our big uptick then. And I'll tell you, after Nashville, that uptick is maybe 3 times the Uvalde uptick. It's been absolutely nuts. But yeah, you're right. We were hearing from bigger schools then. This is kind of everybody all over the place. It's more rural schools. It's more charters. Fewer of the the mainstream size school district, you could say. But it's been interesting because there was an incident at Denver East High School in the Denver Public School District. And all of a sudden, parents who have been very silent in Denver Public Schools on safety flipped their lids and have formed this organization, Resign DPS, to ask all of the school board to resign so they can rebuild the house. And, I don't think they're ever going to be interested in what we're talking about, but they are very concerned that parents have been left out of the loop, and there is zero transparency that there was a kid who'd had firearms charges and was subject to a daily pat down. So there's all kinds of conversation boiling here.
Yeah, well, in Denver, public schools had taken school resource officers out of the schools. And I know right after that shooting at East High, where the 2 staffers who were in charge of patting the student down were shot, I remember Michael Hancock, the Denver mayor, coming out and saying, well, that was a mistake. We need to have, uniformed officers back in school. So they're at least moving, it seems like reluctantly, maybe belatedly, back to a position of, okay, yes, it is good to have some sort of armed response.
Right.
It is good to have some sort of law enforcement presence. And to be honest, I mean, the role of these armed school staffers is different than that of a school resource officer, right? These armed school staffers aren't out there conducting pat downs. They're not there to break up fights in the lunchroom. That's not part of their duties, right? They're there to serve as that first line of defense in case, God forbid, somebody comes on campus with murder on their mind.
Right. The gap that they fill, and let's just use Nashville as an example. It took 14 minutes for law enforcement to get there in a metro area. They went to work as soon as they got there, which was great. But the question is when the shooting starts, between that time and when law enforcement gets there, whether it's 14 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever, who is going to save the children? It's just that gap. But you're right; they're not going to be searching for drugs. They're not going to be doing anything like that. That's for school resource officers, or if you don't have one, you would call 911. And in this last class that we just had over the weekend, which was very cold, by the way, it was 20 degrees on the range for the first day. It was brutal. The class numbers they toughed it out. I was the wimp, but there was a rural school that came through. Their SRO came with them. And they had gotten some grant money to have a school resource officer part-time in the school. He came to the class with the armed school staff members. He is delighted to have backup. He's number one, just part-time there. It's a smaller rural sheriff's office. But even when he's there, if something happens when he has stepped away, gone to the restroom, whatever, then what? So there's some interesting conversations happening along those lines, that it's not either or, but there can be situations where it is all of the above.
I want to talk a little bit more about the training, because one of the criticisms, and I think it's an unfounded criticism, but one of the complaints about armed school staff is, well, listen, I mean, if you put guns in the hands of these teachers, then they're going to use that as as their only option, right? You're going to, have these teachers whipping out guns and banging away, students who are, again, getting into trouble, things of that nature. Clearly, that doesn't happen. I mean, there are, hundreds of districts around the country that have armed school staff in place. We just don't see that. But the training that these staffers go through, it's not just range time, right? It's not just how to respond with force. It's also on how to de-escalate situations that might arise. Yeah,
you're exactly right. And I'll first say that with the media, present company excluded, if that was happening, it would be front page every day forever. Yeah. So the fact that nobody's ever heard of it shows that it's not happening. And John Lott has done tons of research on these programs and what's happening, what's not happening, and the safety and that sort of thing. But yeah, you're exactly right on the training. Of course, there's firearms training. They are training to be armed on campus. But just like with law enforcement, not every situation involves a firearm. Not every situation involves drawing a firearm. And I just ask people, so, and a common way that the ladies in the red shirts state it at public meetings is, so what if a teacher just shoots a student because they have a dispute over grades? And I ask the question, is there a big problem with teachers punching kids in the face because they have a dispute over grades? If teachers aren't resorting to violent reactions, then what makes you think they would resort to a violent reaction just because they have a different tool at their disposal? But we teach a lot of de-escalation in level one. I don't have the curriculum in front of me, but there's a bunch of time. And then in the subsequent levels, every time we're doing the force on force scenarios, every time we're in the simulator room, they're all shoot no shoot scenarios. You have to make very quick decisions on, is this a good guy? Is this a bad guy? Is it a shot that I can take? Is it a shot I shouldn't take? The simulator allows different branches for de-escalation versus scenarios that turn into something else. So yeah, there's tons of time spent on that, Cam.
What about the people who are showing up for this training? Is there a typical Faster Colorado attendee, or does it just look like a cross section of Colorado itself?
Yeah, I tell people it looks like everybody you'd run into in the grocery store, who are probably armed anyway. So we do have some good concealed carry laws here.
For now.
Yeah,
For
for now,
now.
yeah. Thank you for now. I know where I live, but yeah, I'll give you some commonalities. Number one, they're people who have been carrying a concealed firearm outside of work for years to decades, typically. They're also, some people say, well, is this going to be like a cowboy shoot 'em up, blah, blah thing? And it's so interesting because the public perception is so different. These aren't people who are, let me show you how it's done, cowboy types. They are quiet professionals that almost nobody knows as a concealed carry holder. And we keep running into conversations with superintendents when they start going through the process and they ask for volunteers. And every time when we say, okay, how many are you going to have? And let's, get your names registered. And they say, I never knew she was a concealed carry holder. I never knew he was a concealed carry holder. And that's great because these are the quiet professionals that go about their business, happen to be concealed carrying, and nobody ever knows. That's really the what we're looking for, or what the schools are looking for, I should say.
Have you ever run across a circumstance where like a superintendent calls and says, okay, listen, I want to, get scheduled. I want to, put me on the calendar. And then they call back and say, Laura, I'm really sorry, but we have not been able to find enough volunteers. We just don't have enough, personnel that's interested in doing this. So we're going to have to cancel. Is that a problem? Are you the pool of potential armed school staffers?
With the exception of one little tiny school, no. Every superintendent has told me, we thought we're going to need X number of people and we had X plus something. And so they made a decision. Do we expand it to all the volunteers who go through the vetting and get qualified and trained and so forth? Or do they say, we only want this many now, let's, when there's an opening, what have you. There was one little school that just didn't have anybody interested, and they were sort of a satellite of another school that was armed. And but it surprised me because other than that, every school that we've ever talked to has had so many people. So, but that little school has passed the policy, and as they have any openings, they'll be asking questions in the interviews to see if those are people who potentially could help protect students there.
Well, I guess that's the exception that proves the rule, right?
Yeah.
So what do you want people to know about Faster Colorado that I have not asked about? What are people not getting that you see in Colorado? The red shirted moms. What are other myths that need to get dispelled about this program and what Faster Colorado is doing?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Number one, I like that you use the language of armed school staff, because it is all of the staff. The language that we hear out there a lot is armed teachers. And yes, there are some of the armed folks who are teachers in a classroom. But what we've seen is about 40% of our students are teachers. The rest are not tied to a room with kids in it. So I almost think that there's a lot of people who say armed teachers that know that it's mostly not teachers, that like to have that out there. So I'd like to say this is, janitors and coaches and bus drivers and superintendents and counselors and every position across the school. I think I've probably told you before, we've even had a lunch lady and a school nurse come through class. So it's, lots of positions. The other thing is that a lot of people like to put out there that this is a terrible idea, terrible things are going to happen. And I'd like to say in the 20 or so years policy has been out there across the country, nothing has happened. Now we look at all of the things that could happen, somebody getting a firearm from somebody, all of the different things. We look at all of that. We talk about all of it in training. We talk about weapons retention and deep concealment and all of those things. if it was happening, if this was such a catastrophe, it would be all over the news. And it just hasn't been because it hasn't happened.
What about, have you run into, and I know that, again, you're more on the training side, but I ran across a story out of Mississippi a few weeks ago. They've got an armed school staff bill that is, I guess, up for consideration. And one of the talking points against it was, well, insurance companies aren't going to insure these districts. So this is, more of a theoretical than a practical measure. Has that been an issue for these districts in Colorado?
No, and it's an interesting point. There are insurance companies that cover this. So traditional school districts in Colorado have a self-insurance pool that they all participate in. And that group, it's just let us know how many, here's your new bill. And they $1,000 a year per person, something like that. Charter schools have different insurance companies. So I've been able to see kind of that variety. So there are some insurance companies that say we're not covering that. But we also have a resource list for charters who might be with one of those insurance companies that say, here are some that have worked with some of the armed charters. What's interesting, though, is in Ohio, where Faster started, Faster Saves Lives, and that's where I got the idea and brought it out here. Their school districts don't have that big pool like we have here. So they have lots of different insurance companies. It's a little bit more, you can see the free market at work. But when I was back there in 2016 at a Faster class, they had a kind of a guy that works in insurance that's a volunteer there that could talk to folks. He said that some insurance companies say yes, some say no. Some say your premium stays the same, some increased, and some decreased premiums. I think once the market figures that out, insurance companies are going to figure out, especially if, God forbid, there's a situation on one of these campuses where loss is mitigated.
Mm-hmm.
I think insurance companies are going to start saying, hang on a second, it's actually safer to have armed guards in the form of school employees there because it's going to minimize injury and death. So I think long term, that's what happens.
All right. One last question for you, because I'm sure you've talked with Dr. James Eric Dietz at Homeland Security Institute at Purdue University at some point over the years. If you've not, let me put you in touch with him at some point in the future, because he's done a lot of research on armed school staff, and he believes that they are a huge benefit. But his research has said or has suggested that the most effective way, the fastest way to stop an attack on school campus is to have a school resource officer who can go and engage that attacker while you've got armed school staff who are sheltering in place with students in case that attacker breaches, a classroom door. I'm wondering, is there a standard tactic that is taught at Faster Colorado, or is this up to the individual school districts to decide, you know what, we've got our school resource officers. If there is an incident on campus, we want you teachers to, stay in your classroom, let the school resource officer respond. Is this a case-by-case basis, or is there a tactic or strategy that Faster Colorado recommends?
Yeah, so our guys teach a lot of different tactics, and there are a lot of it depends on what happens. So let's just say in that example that if a school had that preference that the school resource officer would engage, that is great if the school resource officer is there at the point of attack. But what we know about these school killers is that they typically want to take as much innocent life with them as possible. If there is a school resource officer there, and we've seen this multiple times in the country, they don't start it right in front of the school resource officer, and they always know where he or she is because of the uniform and the car and all that. So that's not a bad tactic to employ if that's where that happens. But what if it happens on the other side of the campus? And most campuses with SROs are big.
Yeah.
And that's why they have an SRO. That's why they can afford an SRO. So if it happens at the opposite corner, and as in Arapahoe High School, it took that SRO 46 seconds to get to the library, who can we save in that 46 seconds before he gets there? And so, as we talked about, 14 minutes earlier, who can save the children in that 14 minutes? If it's 46 seconds, that's a lot of kids could be harmed or killed in that time too. So I wouldn't say we're going to have a one size fits all tactic for everything, because these situations are so dynamic.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Well, listen, you were doing life-changing and life-saving work, Laura, and I'm glad to see that the response around Colorado is so strong, that the interest is there. If folks want more information about Faster Colorado, how do they find it?
It's really easy, fastercolorado.com, and you can click there to contact me. And there's lots of information and videos and frequently asked questions and all kinds of information. But if you're in Colorado, we'd love to talk to you. We're actually talking to people in other states to help them as well. And so let us know what we can do to help you. We're all in the same business of saving children.
Well, again, thank you for all you do. Thanks for spending some time with us today. And I promise it will not be 9 or 10 months before we have you back on the program. Okay,
that's a deal.
All right. Thanks, Laura.
Thanks.
My thanks to Laura joining us on the program today, and looking forward to having her back again very soon. Thank you for all of the work that she's doing as well. Now let's get to our armed citizen story, our good deed of the day, as well as our recidivist report. We'll start there with a case out of Austin, Texas. Fox News reporting a Texas man convicted of attacking multiple women, given, quote, lenient probation by the George Soros-backed DA there in Travis County. Antonio Cordero Rios, convicted of aggravated assault causing serious bodily injury and injury to a child. But Fox 7 reports that during his sentencing on Tuesday, Cordero Rios' victims, who were packed in the courtroom, got to see a judge hand down a 10-year probationary sentence. One of the victims of this case, a woman named Lynn Isaac, who was attacked by someone in a mask last June of 2021. Her Apple Watch was able to track the length of time she struggled to fight off the perpetrator, but she was ultimately told by the Austin Police Department it'd be tough to find out who attacked her. As Fox News reports, the lack of assistance from the department came the year after the Austin City Council voted to defund the police by about a third of its budget, which has helped to result in a staffing crisis. The city council later forced by state law to restore the approximately $150 million that it had cut from the police department's budget, but by then an officer exodus was already underway. Fox 7 reports that without the police department's help, Isaac went on Nextdoor, which was a hyper-local social networking site. Using the site, found out that other women had also encountered this suspect, and the victims were able to connect the dots themselves. They found the make, model, license plate of the vehicle. They created a map showing the locations of each incident, and that ultimately led to Cordero Rios' arrest. On Tuesday, Fox 7 reports that Isaac was the only victim to say something to the newly convicted Cordero Rios, saying, quote, "Your sentence is too lenient. You got off too easy for what you did. I have no remorse for you. I have heard no apology. You are a monster, and I don't forgive you for what you did to me." Along with 10 years of probation, District Judge Karen Sage told Cordero Rios that he has to stay away from the victims. Oh, great. I'm sure. Yeah. Okay. And register as a sex offender. Yeah. His attorney, by the way, thanked the Travis County DA's office, saying that the deal was reached with the DA's office after 16 months of negotiation and considering Cordero Rios' lack of criminal history prior to the multiple assaults here. As Fox News reports, Travis County DA Jose Garza has been criticized in the past for being tough on cops and soft on crime. Last year, he charged a suspect with a misdemeanor in connection with a fatal DUI crash, which led to a 10-day jail sentence. In February of last year, he obtained indictments against more than 20 Austin police officers for actions taken during the 2020 riots. And, listen, as we talk about on this program each and every day, you don't need to have a prosecutor backed by George Soros. You don't even need to have a prosecutor in a deep blue liberal city like Austin to see these kinds of problems. The vast majority of cases in this country are settled by plea bargains. And in many cases, those plea bargains result in what I consider to be an injustice being done, where victims, again, are left frustrated, angry, disappointed, heartbroken, enraged by the lack of consequences for the perpetrators of these violent crimes. So, yeah, we can talk about Jose Garza, but this is not a problem limited only to Austin, Texas. This is a problem that is endemic in our criminal justice system. By the way, slapping more gun control laws on the books takes us further away from a solution to this problem. Today's armed citizen story from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where an intruder rushed a resident before he was shot multiple times on Monday night, a shooting that police in Baton Rouge say was justifiable. This was about 10 p.m. Monday night at a home on Ontario Street. Authorities say that 37-year-old Lawrence Bajoy reportedly banged on the door of his home multiple times before the resident then opened the door to see what was going on. Bajoy then allegedly charged the resident and hit him before the resident shot him multiple times. The police did not specify whether there was a connection between Bajoy and the resident before this encounter, but Herbert Trees, who lives nearby, says they feared for their life. I feel like that's what it was. Police still investigating. They say they do believe that it was a justifiable shooting. Trees, who lives nearby, again, says there's always a better way to handle something. Well, I don't know about that. If you're being assaulted in your home, you have a right to be, and a stranger is beating you, you have the right to act in self-defense. I wonder if Herbert Trees would feel the same way if it was his door that was knocked on at 10 o'clock Monday night. He said, stuff's going on, but I never noticed anything bad about it till now. Well, maybe wake up and smell the coffee, Herbert, because, look, while the odds are low that any one of us as individuals will become the victim of a violent crime does happen every day, and there are random encounters where random strangers brutally assault and sometimes even kill innocent victims. So, Herbert, you might not think anything bad can happen, but, you'd be wrong. Today's good deed of the day: in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. A couple of TSA officers at the Richmond International Airport in Richmond, Virginia, Officer Nigel Allen and Lead Officer Trenard Collier, on the clock, on the job, when they noticed a pilot collapse there as he was getting ready to go through the security line, apparently suffering cardiac arrest. Allen said, Trenard saw the pilot on the other side of the atrium and told me, I think that guy's about to pass out. I looked over just as the pilot fell to the floor. Yeah, he actually, fell over his rolling bags before he lost consciousness, according to a statement issued by the TSA. That's when Allen sprinted to the pilot's side, called for help, began performing first aid. Police and firefighters arrived and started performing CPR as well, while Allen continued to assist the pilot and first responders. Despite their efforts at CPR, the emergency escalated, according to WSA in Washington, D.C., when the pilot's heart stopped beating and required extended medical intervention. That's when Allen raced to retrieve an automated external defibrillator. They were able to use that machine to restart the pilot's heart and revive him. Once the pilot was revived, Allen and Collier cleared the area to give police and fire responders a further room to attend to the pilot. Looks like the pilot is okay, is recovering. His family has expressed their deepest appreciation for Allen's help and everyone else involved there. Nigel Allen, by the way, has been a TSA officer in Richmond for 4 years, also pursuing a degree in information systems at Virginia Commonwealth University. So in the right place, at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. Officer Allen and Lead Officer Trenard Collier, we thank you very much for your very, very good deed. Now, that is all the time we've got for you on this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company, but I want to thank you for being a part of the program as always, and I'm looking forward to being back with you again on Thursday. We have a lot to talk about at the website today, however, so make sure you check out bearingarms.com. We're talking about the new gun ban in Washington State, as well as the new lawsuit taking on the new gun ban in Washington State. Gun control measures, including a red flag proposal up for a vote in the Minnesota House, and more. Again, we've got you all covered at bearingarms.com. If you like what you see, I would encourage you to become a VIP member. Not only will you get the warm, fuzzy feeling of supporting the Second Amendment journalism we're doing at Bearing Arms, but we'll give you exclusive content, news stories, and analysis you won't find anywhere else, because your support does matter, and it really does make a difference. So thank you again for all of your support. We'll see you back here on Thursday. But until then, be well, be safe, and be free.